Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Lions Grid. Today, we're going to be taking a look at our NFL power rankings, Joe. Um, there has been some movement from what we saw in the previous week. Obviously, Drew Brees getting hurt for the Saints knocked him both out of our top five. But let's actually take a look here, Joe, and start with the media's pick. If you remember from last week, there's five sources we're looking at. We look at ESPN's ranking, NFL.com's ranking, Bleacher Report, CBS Sports, and USA Today. So I'll go ahead and throw these up here on the screen for everyone to see. And really, across the board, you can see the Patriots are that number one team. Most of the sources also having Kansas City there as their number two pick. CBS Sports having the Packers there as their number two team, and Kansas City is their number three team. There's also a lot of the Rams up there, a lot of the Cowboys. The Packers are starting to filter their way in, but so are the Ravens. So really the only unanimous ranking up there, Joe, as I mentioned, is the Patriots as everyone's number one. And spoiler alert for our number one rankings, we both have New England there too. Joe, is there anything that you find really shocking about how the sort of national media is ranking the top five teams here headed into week three?
Well, I think in one of those rankings, they had Green Bay as number two. And I was like, that's kind of surprising to see Green Bay up there all the way to number two. Um, but it's not surprising to see them in the top five. So I feel like there's other teams like Seattle that are better than the.
Just a moment. And we are back. Okay, good. All right. So as I was saying, again, not surprising to see them start to pop up in those top rankings, but certainly, to have them as number two as CBS had them, and I'll just toss up the rankings here again. CBS having them as their number two ranked team, especially with how well Kansas City's played. Certainly surprising to see that, but. You talked about, Joe, how a lot of this is opinion based. So why don't we start off with your opinion here? I'm going to toss up your picks. So you can see here on the board we have Joe's rankings. As I mentioned, and something you'll see when we take a look at my rankings, the Patriots still there number one. Joe's got Kansas City number two, Cowboys number three, Ravens number four, and the Seahawks as his number five team currently. So, Joe, why don't you just tell us a little bit about why you ranked the teams the way you did?
Well, I just think that Russell Wilson's play at quarterback has come through time and time again and proven to be a clutch quarterback. 300 yards passing, 3 TDs this week, getting the job done. And Dallas, Dak Prescott's playing some of the best football he's ever played in his career. And I'm liking the rush game, the defense for the Cowboys. When you look at Baltimore, we see the development of their quarterback and Lamar Jackson, and we see the consecutively good defense. I think last year when we looked at Baltimore, they were in the playoffs and they kind of got beat by a better game plan for the pass game against Lamar Jackson. So I think that's one thing he worked on this offseason. So that's why he gets boosted up there to the number 4 spot. And of course, New England, Kansas City, they're going to stay there. But no love for the Los Angeles Rams. I'm not a fan, and I don't think they have a good enough quarterback to be efficient all year long. I think we're going to start to see some more losses from them in the next weeks or so. But, I just don't believe in the LA Rams, and I believe that they had their time. And after losing the Super Bowl, it's tough to come back and be a perennial powerhouse the next year. They're starting off strong, but I don't believe they can keep that up.
Yeah, and it's funny that you have Baltimore up there in your top five this week, Joe. Especially after last week they were almost there. You almost wanted to put them in. You wanted to see how they were going to do here in week 2 before you sort of elevated them to that status, and certainly you moving them up into the top 5 after what was a pretty good game against the Cardinals last week shows that you did see some good things out of them here this past Sunday.
Yeah, the teams that fell out of the rankings for me was New Orleans and the Eagles. The Eagles struggling with some injuries. In New Orleans, of course, switching over to Teddy Bridgewater with the Breeze injury. Now, I don't believe that New Orleans is going to fall that far in the rankings, like total wise, because Teddy Bridgewater is currently being paid more than Dak Prescott. He's the best backup in the league to have on a team. So if there's any team that can survive a couple or 4 or 5 weeks without Drew Brees or without their starting quarterback, it's the New Orleans Saints.
Well, I think there's certainly going to be some expectations. Obviously, that first game where he had to come in, it was in the middle of the game. He had to come in relief of Drew Brees, so I'm not going to be too critical for him in that regards, because obviously he's now going to have a full week to prepare to be the starting QB. So I'm expecting a much better performance this week out of Teddy Bridgewater. But that first week was kind of rough. And to your point, Joe, I think he is considered by many to be the best backup quarterback in the NFL. A guy who people thought could potentially go and fight for a starting job. The Saints were lucky to bring him in and have him backing up Drew Brees and keep him there this year. But, that first outing was a little rough. Again, he was sort of thrust into action. But when you have Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, some of the weapons that Saints offense has around him, certainly going to look for better play here in week 2. And one of the reasons, and I will give out the spoiler that we're going to take a look here at my rankings in a minute, but the Rams are in my rankings, and one of the reasons they are is that defense. I think part of the issue there with Teddy Bridgewater going up against that pretty decent Los Angeles Rams defense was a tough ask, to come in relief in that situation. So certainly going to look for improved play from him, especially as he has to sort of hold down the fort while Drew Brees is recovering from surgery. But certainly an interesting thing in the storylines. And as I mentioned, let's go ahead and take a look here at my rankings. So we stayed pretty consistent there through the top 3, Patriots, Chiefs, Cowboys. But as mentioned, I still have the Rams there as my number 4 team, and I'm bumping the Green Bay Packers up into my top 5. And again, Joe, that's mostly because they are a team, they've played pretty good football so far, and I think the thing that's surprising for me, the reason I'm elevating them there is actually their defense more so than their offense. Obviously, what you have in Aaron Rodgers. He looked much better here in week 2 of that offense, definitely throwing the ball around a little bit more. But their defense has played really well, and that's been surprising. I know they've had a bunch of acquisitions this offseason, but I really wasn't expecting them to be as good on defense as they have been. Outside of the New England Patriots, they've let up the second least amount of points in the league so far after 2 weeks. Mind you, it's only 2 weeks, and these power rankings do change each week. But, we've talked about it. The NFC North is one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. They've beaten 2 NFC North opponents. So, considering that we consider it one of the toughest, if not the toughest division in the NFL, the fact that they're 2-0, the fact their defense is much better than I thought they were going to be, that got them into my top 5. I don't hate your pick of having Baltimore there because, again, they've proven that they're right there too. So just edged them out, the Packers did, to claim my top 5 spot. But I'm in that same boat with you with the top 3 teams. The Patriots and the Chiefs are going to be there until someone knocks them off. The Cowboys are looking really good. Not only, of course, they have their big 3, but Randall Cobb and Michael Gallup are also looking good in that passing attack. So,
and Jason Witten coming back from retirement.
Yep, Jason Witten's there. That defense is looking good. Liking what I'm seeing out of the Cowboys so far. And then, like I said, with the Rams, big fan of their defense. I think so far they've avoided that Super Bowl hangover. They're starting out the season 2-0. They did beat the Saints, who are, again, my pick. I think they're both of our pick to win the NFC South. At least they were in preseason. The Drew Brees injury could upset that, but they beat them. They beat Carolina last week, so they are looking good. I do share some concerns with Jared Goff. It's going to be interesting to see if he can play at the high level that he played at last year, because he had expectations that were really low. then last season happened and he raised that bar really high. It's kind of hard to, to always produce at that level. So certainly there could be a little bit of a letdown there. But so far, 2 weeks in, you can't argue with a 2-0 result. So keeping the Rams in my top five because of that.
Yeah, one thing to note is that although the Lions still haven't lost a game, they have one tie that's still kind of not really pretty on their record. They're still ranked, 20 or lower. 20 is I think the highest I've seen them ranked. And there's a lot of teams that are 1-1 or 0-2 that are ranked higher than the Detroit Lions, and it's like these guys. I'm watching interviews on the news with the Lions, and these guys think they can win every football game. They come into every football game, wanting to prove a point that they're a team to compete in the NFC North, compete in the NFC playoffs, and really be a competitive team no matter who they're playing. So it's kind of good that we get another sample of a playoff team, a so-called contender this week. And, that team is going to be more amplified when we face a Super Bowl favorite the following week.
Yeah, certainly. I think, to your point, the Lions should have absolutely won that game week 1 against the Cardinals. The fact they didn't, it's not the end of their season. Of course, it's week 1. It's never going to, anything that happens in week 1, unless it's your franchise QB going down, really isn't going to end your season. Certainly a game, if they were 2-0, they could easily be, I think, in some people's, if not, top 15, if not top 10 teams, had they started out the season 2-0. But, they're looking decent. They have a chance here, as we mentioned, as we've been hitting on, the NFC North is a very tough division. So in addition to getting to test themselves here this week against Philadelphia, who's a team everyone expects to be competing for the NFC East and potentially that NFC title, you get a chance to measure up against them. Then you get the Chiefs, and then you're playing the Packers and the Vikings. So you get a chance here to measure up against some teams that people have highly rated. And really what's going to help them out in terms of the power rankings, especially on the national level, is taking care of business on the field. So that's what it's going to come down to. Certainly, as we've sort of talked about, I don't know if you saw today, but the Eagles ended up canceling practice today because they have so many people injured. There's certainly an opportunity heading into Philadelphia. It's not an easy task. We have the Pick'em segment coming up on Saturday, and I'm wrestling with the possibility of choosing the Lions. If I had to choose today, I'm still going with the Eagles. But because of all the injury issues that those Eagles are having, there's certainly an opportunity for the Lions. And I think one way that this team can show that they're not that same old Lions, that they don't have, they're their own strong team, is to come out here and win a game where you don't necessarily expect them to win, but they have an opportunity to, because, they should have had a win on the board in week 1. It's unfortunate they ended up with the tie there and didn't get that win. But they have a chance, I think, this Sunday to win a game where they aren't expected to win, and that could be huge in setting the tone for the season.
Yeah, one quick thing to note about a roster move. I don't know if we were going to talk about it tomorrow, but I just wanted to bring it up quickly today about C.J. Anderson, being cut and released from the Detroit Lions, and then they went ahead and signed another running back. Forget what team, and I forget his name right now, but a relatively unknown player to the actual team. They also released a defensive end and signed another running back to the practice squad. So the Lions making some moves at running back, and looking at this move, we all thought C.J. Anderson was going to be the grinder, not too many big plays, but run up the gut and pick up 3 or 4 yards when you need it. Mm-hmm. And now it appears that we have Kerryon Johnson, an all-purpose back, and we have Ty Johnson, a speedy back, and we have that other guy. I can't remember his name, but
McKissick.
McKissick, he's shown signs of playing good football too. So, we really have a diverse backfield and one that I think is relatively fast. I was never a fan of the LeGarrette Blount. And even when they signed CJ Anderson, I wasn't a real big fan of the signing. I'm like, I know he had a good playoff run, but I really think that's the best he's going to play in the playoffs in his career. And I don't really see him being that effective as maybe some other people see him being. So when they cut him, I wasn't really shocked. I wasn't really, frustrated or upset about the move. I was more or less kind of excited to see some more of these young guys get more opportunity.
Yeah, certainly. I think C.J. Anderson is probably at this stage in his career best suited for somebody who, just how the Rams used him. He bounced around from teams early on in the league or early on in the season, and then he sort of had a nice rest period, and then the Rams started to use him, the last couple of weeks of the regular season into the playoffs. So everybody else at that point in time has gone through a full NFL schedule. They've been beaten down. They're starting to get, injuries have accumulated. People are struggling to finish out the season. And then you have C.J. Anderson, who's coming in as a relatively fresh body, being able to get in there and be more physical than those guys want to be at that point in the season. So certainly if a team takes that approach, they sign him and they hold off on using him until later in the season, certainly could be effective. But I definitely don't mind the Lions moving on from him. It definitely seemed in here in recent weeks, Ty Johnson was getting a bigger role in the offense. And it does seem like we're taking a more speedy approach and letting Carry-On handle any short yardage stuff. So, yeah, don't hate the move and good to see. And then one other thing to note, so this season for Rookie of the Week, it's sponsored by Pepsi, and we didn't mention it, but last week T.J. Hawkinson was nominated as the Rookie of the Week based off of his pretty stellar performance. This week, Jelani Tavai was also named to the Week 2, or was nominated as a Week 2 possibility for that Rookie of the Week. So back-to-back weeks, two Lions rookies getting up there, competing for that Rookie of the Week honor. Good to see. And the fact that it's our number 1 pick and our number 2 pick, week 1, week 2, sort of a nice coincidence there. But it's definitely good to see that in this year's draft, the 2 big draft picks are already getting involved and making an impact for this team.
Yeah, Jelani Tavai is, he got that fumble, caused that fumble on the goal line, and with Gerard Davis, out the first 2 weeks, he's got a chance to, really get a lot of experience, playing defense full time for the Lions the first 2 weeks. But when Gerard Davis does come back, I think he'll pick up, right where he left off last season, and he'll be more acclimated to the system. And it will give us even more flexibility because not really sure who's playing the second middle linebacker position, whether or not it's Revis Maben. But if you put Gerard back there, he's a good run stopper if he ends up going to the right hole and hitting the running back. In coverage, he's made some mistakes. But I think this play from the rookie is going to inspire him to play better at the position. So, when he comes back from injury, it's really going to amplify the defense, I think. I know his rating's only like a 72 in Madden, but, I've always been a fan of the pick, and I always thought he was going to be better than what he has been so far. So I don't think the Lions have given up hope in his potential. And I think that, he could develop into a relatively solid player.
Yeah, certainly. If he comes back and continues to improve, having him and Jelani Tavai there in the middle of the field, could take a position that was one where we were concerned heading into the season, the linebacker spot, and make that one of the real strengths. So certainly it's good to see him back at practice. We'll have to see, if he's going to be, I imagine he'll probably play in the game. I'm not sure how many snaps he'll get in. But, as he gets healthier and starts to get, start to play a bigger role in the defense as he's coming off this injury, could be nice to take what was a perceived weakness heading into the season and turning that into a strength. So, going to be definitely something to watch here moving forward. Well, as we mentioned, this is heading into week 3. So we'll be back again tomorrow night doing an episode taking a look at some of those roster changes, injury updates, things like that we've talked about here today. We talked about a couple of the big ones that happened this week, but there's it was a pretty busy week too in terms of moves and injuries and all that good stuff. So we'll be giving you an update during tomorrow night's episode on some of the latest happenings there. So if you are interested, be sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel and go ahead and ring that bell so you can get a notification when we're going live tomorrow night. But again, just want to, we sort of hit on this every video, but just want to thank everybody who tunes in. It help. Giving us views on the videos helps. Liking the videos also a big way to support us. And then I think the best way, if you want to help us out here on the Lions Grid, if you haven't done so already, is to hit that subscribe button. We're working towards that 100 subscriber mark so we can get our custom URL for the channel. And we're making good progress. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you like the show, we do encourage you to go ahead and do that if you want to. So by all means, take that into consideration. And like I said, me and Joe will be back again tomorrow night taking a look at updates across the NFL. And we'll see you during the next video. Peace out.